Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato. Today we're going to be listening to a very interesting speech by President Bashar al-Assad from Syria. And please excuse me if I mispronounce his name. President Assad has withstood many sanctions, has survived a civil war fomented by the West, and now we're seeing that President Assad is being welcomed back into the Arab League, and his country is becoming whole again. The various factions that made up his country, aside from the Syrian government, are fleeing the country or are being reabsorbed by the Syrian government. And here we have the Saudis and other Arab powers in the world deciding to reintegrate Syria back into the Arab League after removing them once the Syrian civil war started. At one point, they actually gave their seat to the opposition parties, which countries like Saudi Arabia had supported. But that has all changed, and now the leader of Saudi Arabia, who goes by MBS, is willing to make amends and seems to be very good friends with the Syrian president. This video today is brought to you by Syriana Analysis, the YouTube channel. I believe he is the one who put together the captions for this video, and so I would encourage you to go watch all of his material. We're just going to be providing commentary on the actual speech.
سمو الأمير محمد بن سلمان ولي عهد المملكة العربية السعودية، أصحاب الجلالة والسيادة والسمو، السيدات والسادة، من أين يبدأ المرء حديثه والأخطار لم تعد.
Okay, so he's starting off very strong in this speech. He's starting off talking about not only dangers that are imminent, but are fully realized. And he's going directly to the heart of the matter, which is that the United States and Western powers have been dismantling countries across the Middle East, and they really wanted to dismantle Syria, but they were unsuccessful. And by showing that this is not something in the future, this is something that is currently occurring, he's showing that other countries have something to fear, that this is a tangible, present threat to their own countries as well, even if it hasn't directly impacted their specific country yet. Because it's impacting countries around them, they should definitely be worried.
وعندما تتراكم العلل يمكن للطبيب أن يعالجها فرادا.
Okay, so when he's talking about ailments, this is a really interesting way of tackling this problem, and that is that he's getting into discussing that the problems in the Middle East and the greater Muslim world are not really due to the internal problems. So people are bickering between Sunnis and Shias, between Arabs and Kurds, between Turks and Kurds, between Arabs and Turks, between the Persians, Iranians, and everyone else as well. And what he is saying here, that all of these disagreements, all these disputes, all these problems that are occurring within the Muslim world are due to something else, and that all of these things are just ailments of a larger disease, a larger thing that needs to be cured. And so what he's going to be talking about in a second is America and Israel.
شرط أن يعالج المرض الأساسي المسبب له. فإذا علينا أن نبحث عن العناوين الكبرى التي تهدد مستقبلنا وتنتج أزماتنا كي لا نغرق.
Okay, so if you notice there, he said produces our crises. It's not that these are naturally occurring. It's that there are countries in the West, which he knows, and he's not coming out directly out and saying it, but everyone else knows as well who those countries he's talking about are. United States and Israel primarily, with a lot of their other puppets, such as Western European powers.
نغرق الأجيال القادمة بمعالجة النتائج لا الأسباب.
Results, not causes.
والتهديدات فيها مخاطر وفيها فرص.
And when he talks about results, not causes, what he's really getting at there is that if you're only focusing on those ailments that he was talking about earlier, the results, you're not fixing the problem. And so more problems are going to arise. And so he's saying that there are these threats in the region, threats in the area, and they have risks and opportunities. And the Muslim world for the longest time has focused on the risks, but now they're realizing with the rise of Russia and China that there might also be some opportunities. That yes, there are these powers creating chaos in the region, but there are also other potential powers which we could gravitate towards. We don't only have one option anymore. So change the international situation. Again, what I was talking about, right? This is a pivot from the West to the East. It is him directly saying, change the international situation. That is the changing from a unipolar world to a multipolar world.
الذي يتبدى بعالم متعدد الأقطاب كنتيجة لهيمنة الغرب المجرد من المبادئ.
Okay, a couple of interesting things there. Again, he emphasizes that the unipolar world is dominated by the West, specifically America, and that the West is devoid of principles, morals, friends, and partners. So there's really two things to tackle there. One is the principles, morals component that he mentions. And when you don't have principles and morals, you really can't have a functioning society. You just decay into a hedonistic mess. And so he's saying that there's this aversion, if you're a Muslim or a God-fearing person in general, to the type of degeneracy, the type of immoral nature of the West. And so that's the first part, the principles and morals. Now, the friends and partners, also interesting. So if you're someone listening to this speech and you don't really care about the religion aspect of it, which the people in the room there do care about the religion aspect of it, but if you're not one of those people as a viewer here, then the friends and partner thing might also be of interest. And it's definitely of interest to the people in that room as well. And that is that the United States and the West does not have friends. It does not have friends and it does not have partners. Okay? They have people they use temporarily and they will exploit for as much as they're worth. Just think about this for a second. The United States turned Japan and Germany into puppet client states, and they still screwed over both of those countries in the end. They built them up, but they said, you can only get too strong. And if you get any stronger, we're going to pull the plug on your nation. We just heard that Germany is in a recession. They've had multiple quarters of negative economic growth. We also know, obviously, that the United States was, I think everyone would agree, the most likely culprit for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, which I will remind people forever and ever that blowing up German and Russian critical energy infrastructure is a huge violation of international law and a huge, huge war crime. It's just against everything the international community stands for. So United States was willing to do that to Germany, one of its own puppets. And in regards to Japan, Japan has been stagnant for decades, and that is entirely because of the fact that at one point Japan was getting really, really strong and the United States got scared. And so what the United States did was they developed the Plaza Accords, and the Plaza Accords completely cut Japan's economy off at the legs. It was just horrible for the Japanese economy. It was exploitative of Japan, and it made it so Japan couldn't function competitively after the Plaza Accords were signed. And so what President Assad is saying here with the friends and partners comment is that the United States has no friends and partners. And you can clearly see that with how they've treated their current friends and partners. They've exploited them, they've backstabbed them, they've just been horrible to them.
والأخلاق والأصدقاء والشركاء. هي فرصة تاريخية لإعادة ترتيب شؤوننا بأقل قدر من التدخل الأجنبي.
Okay, least amount of foreign interference. What he's saying there is that due to the United States now being focused on Russia and China, and right now Russia and soon to be China to a much larger extent, he's saying that the Arab world has a chance to collect itself, unify, and provide a unified front against the immoral menace that is the United States. And then he goes on to say right here, which requires repositioning us in this world. And he's talking about that pivot from being subservient, dominant to the West, and kneeling to them, and pivoting, repositioning to the multipolar world, which is tangibly here, and there's a lot of things that they can do to actually make it even more real.
وهو ما يتطلب إعادة تموضعنا في هذا العالم الذي يتكون اليوم كي نكون جزءا فاعلا فيه مستثمرين في الأجواء الإيجابية الناشئة عن المصالحات التي سبقت القمة وصولا إلى.
So when he talks about the positive interactions occurring at the summit today, it's really worth considering that the people he's sitting with, a lot of them actually funded what would be considered terrorist groups. They were rebel elements within his country. And soldiers, family members he knows, people he cares about have died in this civil war. And President Assad wants to fight this evil abroad so much that he's willing to forgive the people who betrayed him in that room, because he's saying there's larger problems. There's these evil, outright evil forces working against us, and we have to put aside our differences. And so this is a shockingly benevolent, forgiving man here, because him putting those grudges in the past means that he can really help that region to grow into the powerhouse that it really should be. It should not just be exploited for its oil.
هي فرصة لترسيخ ثقافتنا في مواجهة الذوبان القادم.
Consolidate our culture in the face of the economic meltdown with neoliberalism. So talking about culture is really important, because you're seeing that the Western dominance of media and entertainment has really made it so cultures all across the world are under assault by American culture. And American culture is consumerism, it's hedonism, it's nihilism. It's awful. It's really bad for these other cultures, but it's also very addictive for young people. And so he's actually making a concerted effort to fight against that influence on their culture. And he's saying in the face of the upcoming meltdown with neoliberalism, well, he's talking about the Western way of doing things is collapsing. And he's not saying it may collapse, but he's saying upcoming. It's going to happen. It's arriving very soon.
مع الليبرالية الحديثة التي تستهدف الانتماءات الفطرية للإنسان وتجرده من أخلاقه وهويته.
Ooh, that's a really interesting point. I need to go back to that.
الحديثة التي تستهدف
that targets the affiliations of man
الانتماءات الفطرية للإنسان وتجرده
and strips him of his morals and identity. So they're talking here about how the West has, in its rush to make people as these unique butterflies, unique snowflakes, they've actually really stripped people of their identity and just made their identity this weird consumerism. I definitely feel like that's the case. Like the people who say that they're the most individualistic tend to actually be the least unique people I've ever seen. Okay, this is something relatively new, I would say, and to define our Arab identity with its civilizational dimension, that's new. Talking about civilizations, well, I don't want to say it's entirely new, but it at the very least went away for many decades. We quit talking about civilizations and really started to emphasize nation states. And we're seeing that talks of civilizations is coming back because of the fact that Western civilization is both taking over and declining at the same time, which is really interesting. It's like this monstrosity that is expanding and consuming the entire world, but as it spreads, it dilutes and dilutes and dilutes to the point where it's completely going to evaporate. It's completely going to be gone. And so here he's talking about the civilizational dimension and how we can cultivate and how we can maintain Muslim civilization, Arabic civilization, etc., in the area, which is really interesting because nations are really realizing that American culture is just infecting everything, and it's not to other cultures' benefits.
ببعدها الحضاري وهي تتهم زورا بالعرقية والشوفينية بهدف جعلها في حالة صراع مع المكونات الطبيعية
with the aim of making it in this state of conflict with the natural. So he's talking about the fact that the West goes out of its way to cause chaos and disorder within countries so it can exploit the people and extract their resources.
القومية والعرقية والدينية فتموت وتموت معها مجتمعات
So that our societies die in their struggles with themselves, right? It's all about making sure that America is left with all the resources in the end.
بصراعها مع ذاتها لا مع غيرها. العناوين كثيرة لا تتسع لها كلمات ولا تكفيها قمم. لا تبدأ عند جرائم الكيان الصهيوني المنبوذ.
Okay, so talking about the crimes of Zionism again. So he's really tackling the two big problems. He didn't mention America directly, but it was obvious who he was talking about there, but he's also directly, explicitly mentioning the Zionist regime.
عربيا بحق الشعب الفلسطيني المقاوم
And I think strategically it makes a lot of sense for him to mention the Palestinian cause here because Palestinians are primarily Sunni Muslims and he is a Shia Muslim and the majority of the people in that room are Sunni Muslims as well. So him reminding them that he is a major supporter of the Palestinian cause reminds them that he is considerate and caring of causes that aren't just about Shia Muslims, but also Sunni Muslims. And so that may make them a little bit more persuadable to helping him or at least repairing relationships with him.
عند خطر الفكر العثماني التوسعي المطعم بنكهة إخوانية منحرفة ولا تنفصل عن تحدي التنمية كأولوية قصوى لمجتمعاتنا النامية. هنا يأتي دور جامعة الدول العربية باعتبارها المنصة الطبيعية لمناقشة القضايا المختلفة ومعالجتها شرط تطوير منظومة عملها عبر مراجعة الميثاق والنظام الداخلي وتطوير آلياتها كي تتماشى مع العصر. فالعمل العربي المشترك بحاجة لرؤى واستراتيجية.
Okay, so this line here, joint Arab action needs common vision, strategies, and goals. That goes back to what we were talking about earlier about reinforcing the civilization against threats from abroad. They need to make sure that the United States cannot influence their people, that they have a shared vision, strategies, and goals, and that the United States can't divide them and exploit divisions and cause social strife within their countries.
وأهداف مشتركة نحولها لاحقا إلى خطط تنفيذية بحاجة لسياسة موحدة ومبادئ ثابتة وآليات وضوابط واضحة. عندها سننتقل من رد الفعل إلى استباق الأحداث وستكون الجامعة متنفسا في حالة الحصار لا شريكا به ملجأ من العدوان لا منص.
That was a little bit of a spicy take, helping out from a siege instead of participating in it, and now a refuge from aggression and not an enabler of it. What he's saying there is that a lot of those countries in the room did screw him over, and pretty unfairly, because he was actually working with them. He was a part of the Arab League before, and so they just turned their backs on him because the United States offered them some Syrian land, and what ended up happening, Israel got land. Syria did not give up its land to other countries. It did not give up its resources to other countries. And so all these other Arabic countries screwed over Syria, hoping to get something from it, and they got nothing from it aside from losing Syria as an ally, at least temporarily. But because President Assad is such a benevolent person, he's willing to forgive them, but he's still pointing it out what they did here.
أما عن القضايا التي تشغلنا يوميا من ليبيا إلى سوريا مرورا.
Okay, this is worth mentioning, and I'm glad he did mention this, was from Libya to Syria, passing through Yemen and Sudan. He's talking about all the conflicts, or at least some of the major conflicts that the West has fomented in recent times for Muslim nations.
باليمن والسودان وغيرها من القضايا الكثيرة في مناطق مختلفة، فلا يمكننا معالجة الأمراض عبر معالجة الأعراض. فكل تلك القضايا هي نتائج لعناوين أكبر لم تعالج سابقا. أما الحديث في بعضها فهو بحاجة لمعالجة التصدعات التي نشأت على الساحة العربية خلال عقد مضى، واستعادة الجامعة لدورها كمرمم لجروح لا كمعمق لها. والأهم هو ترك القضايا الداخلية لشعوبها، فهي قادرة.
Okay, so leave issues to the countries themselves to figure out. Don't have external players come in and swarm the country, choosing sides, is what he's saying there. And again, directly pointing out what a lot of those people did without, like, really, I mean, holding them accountable in words, but also it seems like because they're inviting him back, they already know that they made a mistake by doing that. So, I think this is a good strategy. It's more merciful than people deserve in that situation, but it's the right strategy to use if you want to make your country successful, which I think President Assad definitely wants his country to be successful.
على تدبير شؤونها، وما علينا إلا أن نمنع التدخلات الخارجية في بلدانها ونساعدها عند الطلب حصرا. أما سوريا فماضيها وحاضرها ومستقبلها هو العروبة، لكنها عروبة الانتماء لا عروبة الأحضان.
Okay, this is Arabism of belonging and not Arabism of alliances. This is an interesting thing that he's talking about here, and this is probably the last main point I'd want to cover. So let's see what he says about this.
فالأحضان عابرة، أما الانتماء.
Okay, so first point, alliances are transient, belonging is permanent. So by talking about Arabism as a belonging, it's something tangible, it's something you're always a part of. It's long lasting. So we'll see what else he has to say about this.
وربما ينتقل الإنسان من حضن لآخر لسبب ما، لكنه لا يغير انتماءه. أما من يغيره فهو من دون انتماء من الأساس. ومن يقع في القلب لا يقبع في حضن، وسوريا قلب العروبة وفي قلبها. السيدات والسادة، ونحن نعقد هذه القمة في عالم مضطرب، فإن الأمل يرتفع في ظل التقارب العربي والعربي.
So really he's just talking about the fact that there need to be deeper ties that last over and above very transient, very temporary alliances. And it's really interesting to hear about this belonging thing, because as an industrial and organizational psychologist, we talk about things like diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And belonging is one of those tangible components of a person's identity. And looking to forge these bonds of identity, we could say, instead of just alliances, which are pieces of paper, really changes the game. It changes how long lasting, as he talked about, the relationship, the rapport between people, between groups can be. And so that's what he's trying to do here, is he's trying to change that rapport to be far, far, far longer lasting and far harder for external powers such as the United States to break up, right? If you have an alliance on a piece of paper, that's pretty easily to run away from. But if you view the person as your brother, it's a lot harder to run away from that reality and betray them.
العربي الإقليمي والدولي والذي توج بهذه القمة، والتي أتمنى أن تشكل بداية مرحلة جديدة للعمل العربي للتضامن فيما بيننا، للسلام في منطقتنا، للتنمية والازدهار بدلاً من الحرب والدمار. والتزاماً بالدقائق الخمس المخصصة للكلمات، أتوجه بالشكر العميق لرؤساء الوفود الذين عبروا عن المودة المتأصلة تجاه سوريا، وأبادلهم بالمثل. كما أشكر خادم الحرمين الشريفين على الدور الكبير.
Okay, so he's just talking about his thankfulness for being invited there. But yeah, that is. So we're just going to end the speech there. But that is everything I really wanted to go over in regards to his speech. So very interesting speech. Talked about a few things, creating long-lasting bonds based off of belonging. Talked about reforming those relationships. Talked about a civilizational state. And going to treat the root cause instead of looking at treating the symptoms. All these really interesting things. Talked about Zionist regime directly. President Assad is one of those leaders to look out for. The fact that Vladimir Putin and Russia managed to keep his country together, President Assad's country together, it just shows that Vladimir Putin thinks that President Assad is someone worth keeping around as an ally. And so this is someone to watch as a major leader in upcoming years for Arab politics. So that is what I will leave you with. Thank you for watching this video going over the President Assad speech. Have a good day.